we can actually get up onto something. Like what we could do is we've got our collision objects, and we could have multiple physics boxes, but we could take like kind of a bigger physics box, which is the whole thing. And basically, if we could have like a little thing there, or if it's like halfway through the physics box, and we can make it up there anyway, maybe we can just let ourselves kind of clip through if our actual box can fit up here properly. So maybe we should do like a sweep test on a smaller bit of geometry, or in this case, we've only got circles and boxes for collision geo for these guys moving. I think what we do is we just do some ray casts on the box, and we're not rotating this box at all, so we've got that going for us at least. So if we don't collide, do the normal motion. No, we need to figure out where we're actually colliding. So if we're stuck to a wall, yeah, sure. Hey Isho, or Ishu. I'm just thinking about physics at the moment, and trying to kind of get it through my head exactly how I want all the little edge cases for movement to work. And right now, basically, the thing we're on is if we jump up and we collide with a wall, and we have like positive vertical or like some horizontal velocity, and it's close enough that we'd want to consider being able to have the character just move on top of a platform or continue to move, but not along the wall. We want them to actually get like over the level wall, basically stubbing your toe on a platform when you jump onto it. And because you stubbed your toe, all of a sudden you didn't make the jump and everything sucks, and your girlfriend leaves you, and you can't make rent for the next month, and then you burned like your breakfast, and then you uninstall the game and sue the developers for being assholes or something. So we want to prevent that from happening, obviously. And I think basically what we want to do is we want to sweep test, like if we're on the wall, we want to sweep test in the direction of our vertical, of our velocity before we actually do our stuff. We do need to apply gravity straight down, because that's just should happen. Oh no, we don't want to apply gravity yet. Fuck. So we do the sweep test in this direction. If no collision, so like we hit the wall, but then like our velocity says we're immediately getting off the wall, then we just get off the wall. So if there is no collision, move as if in the air. So if there is no collision, just move nowhere and simulate as if in the air. So if something happened, then screw it, go to air control. Okay, if there is a collision, we want to give ourselves a little bit of easing, so we want to know exactly what collided. So why don't we take a look in Unreal real quick and see exactly what our what the hell is it called? It's an F hit result. Let's see what it's got on it. So our F hit result has got we haven't even gotten into moving out of objects and stuff like that in case we get screwed up, which is going to happen because we're not, our bounding boxes are dynamic, right? So if Bitey is crouching, he's going to have a shorter box, and then he stands up, and he's going to stand up into a log that's above him. What the hell happens to his geometry, right? So all these collision checks are if like we're literally a box moving around a box world, or a nice geo place, which is fine, but we're going to add another layer of complication here. That's going to completely screw our entire math up. But we'll get there. We need to move as a box before we can move as not a box. So I'm looking for... Yeah, we have the start of the location of the trace and the end of the location. This is not where the impact occurred. So we have the trace start, and the trace start for a hit, if we're doing like a sweep test, should actually give us what I think we're looking for. So we do have... So we do this trace, and our hit is going to be like right here. So we're going to know we started in like the bottom right of the box. So I think what we want to do is we want to like segment this guy into another rectangle. And we're basically going to say, well, okay, we hit. So now we're going to test against kind of the acceptable motion, kind of the acceptable box test for the collision. So if no collision, we are going to want to check, we're going to do a sweep test with a more forgiving box. So we're going to chop off Bitey's feet and do like a sweep test using just his torso or something like that, like here, and if that sweep test passes. So if no collision, what we want to do is we want to move, we'd like to move the character, to the location? I mean, that's not really what we want. Like, if there's no collision, we want to be able to move the character, but we want to make sure like that the character can actually exist in that location. I mean, that's not awful. So if no collision, we want to temporarily move to the new location. Well, I guess check if any static collision at the location. If no, then move to that location. And since, and like us landing on that platform will kind of happen next frame or something like that. Like we could take a step, and the next physics step will land our character. So if we can't actually exist in that location, so that would kind of look like if we had another wall right here and we tried to move and like, well, I guess this brings up another thing, like we'd actually like get here, and if we could stand here, we would totally just stand here. Alright. So so we do a sweep test with a more forgiving collision box, and if we collide, yeah, we want to move to the point of the collision, and then we want to do our same check. Can we exist? We do a static check against the point of collision to see if we can be there. So if we collide, if we don't collide, so if we cannot be in this location, so if we can be in this new static location, then we move to that. We move to this location, and we simulate as if we are in the air for the rest of the time. If we cannot be here, alright, yeah, we'll do the same thing. If yes, then we simulate as if we are in the air for the rest of time. If we don't collide, check static location. If yes, I simulate. Yeah. If yes, move to that location. Simulate for the rest of the time. So if no. So we can't exist in that location. So basically what's going on is we recast this thing, and we are gonna like end up in the ground or something like that. Well, we can't move there, so we're gonna move like as if we're normally on the wall. So we would apply friction, so we get slowed down, and we would move normal to the wall. So if we still had positive velocity, we would move, up on the wall, and we wouldn't be able to snap over to the right because there's nothing there. So we kind of hit the wall, bam, and slide up. And if any of those other steps got to that point, we would be able to go on top of the wall and keep moving. So I think that's kind of what we want. So if we cannot be here, simulate the wall motion as normal. So sweep test is forget it. If we collide, if we don't collide, check static collision. If there is static collision, oh, so this is if no, and this is if yes. So we did the sweep test with the forgiving box. We did not collide with anything. I mean, we did collide with something with the forgiving box. So oh, this is okay. If we don't collide with the forgiving bounding box, but then we do a static check and we can't exist there. So this is basically we got stuck. Our feet are in the ground. Should we try to nudge like the character up? But we already applied our velocity. I think if we don't collide, why don't we just default to simulate the wall motion as normal? So if we would end up with our feet stuck in the wall, then we're just like, well, we're not moving. Sounds about right. So that should give us basically Bitey mantling and all that. This is irrespective of like the actual animation that Bitey will be playing. His motion should be, we should be able to get the animation states to kind of match what he's doing, because Bitey's going to move way too damn fast for an animation to slow him down, right? Like if we're waiting there for his like mantling animation to play, it's going to be blocky and jerky as hell, and we can't do that. We're going to be making it so the animation looks good, but Bitey's moving so fast that, if he slows down just because he needs to put his arms forward and do like some, he needs to do like that Army of Two fist pound every 5 seconds and like stop and do that, then it's just not going to work. So we can at least not worry too much about the animations. We'll play the animations that make it look correct, but the motion is king in a platforming game. So I'm gonna take a short break here. I'm gonna need to grab some food. We've been streaming for about 2.25 hours, so I think that's fair. So I will probably. Yeah, we'll see. I'll just throw up the screen and see how long it actually is. I might just be kind of in and out since I need to grab some food. I need to like actually cook that food, so it'll be fun. So just gonna leave all the things here and throw up the overlay, and I'll be back shortly. we'll get back into this in just a little bit. Oh, we're gonna get back to doing the physics, right? Figuring out exactly how we're gonna get all this stuff to work. Yeah. So where exactly were we? Well, I think we've pretty much got the basic rules that we're going to need to code out in order to move around a basic static object that doesn't change, kind of like, you know, if we were just a box running around a world. And some of the questions that come up, well, are we going to have more moving platforms? Because the moving platform is going to change all of this crap, right? Because if you're on the ground that's moving, well, shit, you know, we're going to have to move with that platform properly. I don't really know if we're going to have any moving platforms in Dashkin. There's not really too much that's going to be moving around that, you know, you can really step on. It's not like we're in the middle of a factory with a bunch of, you know, a bunch of crap going around a conveyor belt or something like that. And he's not going to be like jumping on springs, and I mean, at least not. I mean, springs would be different, but you know, we're not jumping on stuff that's moving all over the place. So I don't think we have to worry too much about it to begin with. There are things there, like Bitey is going to crouch, he's going to slide, he's going to basically change his hitbox. You know, he's going to go from a hitbox that's, you know, like this. He's going to go to a hitbox that's like that. You know, he's going to go from Big Mario to Little Mario. So the question is, what happens when you go back? You know, Big Mario, and you know you're under a log. You know what happens? You know, like your Bitey's head's gonna clip through the frickin' screen, and you know bad shit happens. So what are we going to do about that? So one thing is if, we are crouched and we are under a log, one of the solutions is we don't let you stand up, right? Like, you can't go to an animation state like, if we were like in code, we'd be like if crouched, and if, like test the animation of stand and see if stand hitbox, lets you exist there, and if it doesn't, then we'll just don't let him stand up, right? Like, screw it, you can't stand, you're stuck. So we can solve a lot of the basic ones, like standing and all that stuff, but just things that we do need to do, like other physics calls we need, and we need a test animation state method on physics, and that should return if it's safe to transition to that state, or if that's going to put us into a position where, bad crap is going to happen. So we can prevent a lot of stupid things by doing it in code, with like just not letting you change animation states. So that's good. But what about stuff we can't really control? What about stuff that we're not going to program in there because, for whatever reason, we're actually right now not locking our physics box. So like, if this is our physics box, and we've got our character, and our character is, like whatever, and we flip the character, but we don't move him. So, our character is going to be here, but his physics box is going to be, flipped. And the question is, what the hell happens in that case of, this character turns around and their physics box flipped, and they were like right next to a wall. So we've got a wall, and he flips, and all of a sudden, half his shit's in the wall. That's not good. So how are we going to solve that? And one of the things we're doing is I've told Adam we'll keep all the physics boxes symmetrical about the middle of the character. So we're kind of guaranteed, at least, that if our character switches directions, that it's going to be damned close. Like, if this happens, where we turn around and all of a sudden we're in the frickin' wall, that at least it's going to be close enough that it's not going to be a big deal. So I think what we need to do in this case is we need to, like, before we simulate physics, we're going to need to nudge our character out of the wall. Basically out of whatever's there. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to do, before simulating motion, we need to check if we are currently penetrating any geometry. Because if we're penetrating some geometry, we need to do something. So I'll only go over a few cases of this real quick. So let's say we're standing, and our box is, why don't we just do it? So like, let's say there's 3 states we've got right now. We've got stuck on wall, we've got in the air, and we've got standing on ground. So if we are stuck on the wall, and we are, well, let's start on standing on the ground, just because simpler case. So if we're standing on the ground, and we find that we are stuck in the wall, there are 2 cases, I think, where that could happen. Like, we are on the ground, and we're kind of stuck in the wall. Or we're kind of next to a wall, and we're kind of stuck into that wall, in some way. Or we are, stuck into the wall, kind of just to the left. So let's figure out exactly what we need to do to kind of do this. So if we're stuck in the, if we are standing on the ground and we are stuck in geometry, we're going to want to know what we are stuck in. So what sort of information do we have? Let's start with that. So I think it's this overlap box check. Why don't you use Visual Studio? Well, I do use Visual Studio. So overlap box. It's going to give us this overlap multi by channel, and we're going to have this F collision query response params. So let's go Google that real quick. Let's see what we've got. Yeah, I'm using Visual Studio 2015 Community Edition. So let's see. So we've got collision response params that we're chucking in there. And what's it going to give us? Yeah, I'm not very familiar with exactly what this has got. So it's got the collision response. Okay, so the collision response is the thing on it, and that is a collision response container. And the collision response container has the things that we've collided with. So we have those are variables? What? Alright, yeah, this isn't really making a whole lot of sense to me. There should be more here than this. So let's see. Yeah, I like to keep like notes separate, and Notepad++ is, you know, compromised by the CIA, so I like to use that just to make sure the government knows what I'm doing. Let's see. When we call overlap multi by channel, it's okay. So the hits is going to be this F overlap result. Yeah, I was like, I think I got something wrong here. So the overlap result is going to be, we have an array of, excuse me, clear my throat. By overlap, we are going to get the primitive component that we are overlapping. Well, not a whole hell of a lot else, are we? Like, we've got the primitive component. So we'll know what we're colliding with, but we're not going to have like the extra information about like, well, what's the surface normal to that thing. So how should we figure out exactly what's going on? Because we need to nudge ourselves out of the wall. How are we going to figure out, well, which direction is out of the wall? Well, we can assume that last frame we weren't in the wall, or something changed here that put us into this thing. But let's see if we can get away without that information. See, we can check like if our point, like our center of our bounding box area, is within the wall, and then we can kind of nudge ourselves. Maybe we can cast a ray towards the object that we hit. But that's kind of a, like, how would we know which direction to actually nudge ourselves? So if like we were colliding with a box like this, right, and we were kind of inside of it, you're like, well, how do we get out of this box? Well, you could like have like, well, here's the center of this box, here's the center of this box, and then if you like, you know, cast a ray in this direction, you could get that, and the surface normal there is so, and you can move out that way. But like really sucks in a situation like this. Like if we were over here, you know, doing the centers would give us the correct normal and all that stuff, but that's not very good. So it seems like it's not going to be like we want to check against the surface normal for an object based on the object we're penetrating. We kind of just want to cast a ray like straight down, I guess, in kind of these cardinal directions. And then we're going to like nudge ourselves outside of this object that we're penetrating based on that. So if we're, and we'll do it by axis. So like, okay, are we colliding? All right, let's nudge ourselves in the z axis. Okay, now let's nudge ourselves in the y axis. And we also want to know like how we are penetrating, because if we're penetrating multiple objects, like we're penetrating these two boxes, and we nudged ourselves up, like there's nowhere to nudge ourselves up, right? So we need a collection of rules that basically is going to let us move this thing to a proper position. Alright, so we're standing on the ground and we are stuck. We are going to... we are stuck. So, let's see. Let me just have like an if here. So, if we actually have a collision with our overlap test, then we're going to have all these states. And this is kind of just pseudo-coding it out. This will turn into kind of code later. So we are standing on the ground. Do we know which part of us is actually overlapping? Because if we were like, you know, we're... Or maybe we can make this a little simpler, like if we're standing on the ground and all of a sudden we're overlapping something. Well, we were on the ground, right? So like we should move up. But maybe we don't have to know about that. Maybe we can go simpler. So if we just cast rays in cardinal directions, so cast... Well, let's also check a few other things, like if we cast rays from the center of our object, you know, what if we're like this, we cast a ray with our object, we're not going to hit jack shit. So that's not going to work. So how exactly do we want to move this? That's a good question. I mean, it'd be real simple if we had like, you know, the whole world is made out of squares. You know, like a tile map or something, and you just have like the tiles be the collision or something, and you know you'd have different collision for the tiles. So, you know, you'd just be doing tile-based collision. So you'd be like, all right, no problem. Like, you know, like if we're penetrating something, well, we never would, because you know it would be like, you know, a grid square, and it'd be like, are you in that grid square? All right, well, you should move the hell out of that grid square. You can't go there. But we're not living in a box world, we're living in an analog world, right? So we have to deal with this sort of crap. You know, like if you were on the Super Nintendo or something, you're not making your guys, you know, 75.5 units high, you're making them 1 unit high or 2 units high. And they're and that's in the whole world as a grid, stuff like that. We're not. So we have a more complicated problem than that. Let's just put our more complicated drawing up here. So there are a few things that we can assume, and that is basically that if we're penetrating something, that we're going to be penetrating it on some one of these corners, right? Something like that. At least I think so. Like we can basically do point tests against the other object, so we know we're colliding with this object, so we could kind of figure out, if we're basically two boxes here, we will know which thing we are colliding with. So we could kind of work like some rule-based stuff, kind of left to right or something. Like we could test our bottom left corner, see if we're penetrating there, and if we're penetrating there, we try to move ourselves up and kind of do it that way. Because a lot of these things with collision detection, it's more important that it's consistent, not always that it's correct. In terms of like if you ever watched AGDQ, and they're playing like Shantae or whatever, Risky's Revenge, whatever game that they've got on there, and they talk about zipping, and so like the basic concept of zipping is like you'll get into some place where your character is maybe one tile high, and then he stands up or she stands up, and then that character freaks the hell out, and like the physics engine takes that character to a different part of the level. So basically, like I think one of them was in Shantae. There's a little pillar, and I'm drawing dicks on stream. Just bear with me here. So you've got a pillar, and it's got like a a thing in the middle, and Shantae's like right here, and then when Shantae stands up, she's too tall, and as a result, she like flies to like the rule engine or something for that game was like you try to move up and to the left or something along those lines until you're free of the collision, and it would basically teleport you to it just keep moving you like down and right until you're off the world, and you'd be able to like skip an entire area of the game. And there's a reason people do that. It's because it usually works pretty well. So we don't have to be perfect. We just have to be consistent, and then we can always be like like with Shantae. Obviously, with the developers, it was just like, well, don't put a frickin' pillar where it's gonna freak the rules out. Just like we got a QA department. Be careful with your geometry. So there's some of those things where it's like, okay, we'll make sure that there is never a case where there's a moving platform that comes over Mario and crushes him against a wall, or if we do, we just kill